Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Dr. Swarup, SRD Orthopedics. Today, as you know, today I am going to discuss about splint and traction in orthopedics. There are several types of splint and tractions are there, and this there is a separate book for this, and there is 400 pages in that book, and from that you can make it out how vast this subject is. So it is not possible to cover all the points here in 1 hour. So I am going to discuss about the main things which are we are using in everyday practice here in our department of orthopedics. So let's start. So I will discuss about the splint first. After that we will go with traction. Splint, as you know, these are devices to immobilize a fractured part or a painful joints, okay, to protect a injured limb or a spine or the spine, okay, and can be of any rigid material, okay, can from starting from a wood to a metal to plaster of Paris and all this, okay, can be of any rigid material, PUP, plastic or metal, even wood also. We are using in while transporting from a remote places, no. Usually along with some padding to make it comfortable. Whenever you apply a splint, we have to apply cotton first to make it comfortable and to cause less trauma to the skin. They are used before or instead of cast or traction. Okay, a splint, depending upon the mood, type of fracture and displacement of the fracture, sometimes splint can be a definitive treatment also. Beside acting as a immobilizer, it can be used as a treatment purpose also for that fracture. If it is undisplaced fracture and there is no open wound, then we can continue with the splint for 1 or 2 months, and this will be the sole treatment for that patient. Indication of splint. Indications are fracture, any sprain without fracture, any dislocation, joint infection, painful joints, no? Acute arthritis, gouty arthritis, these are also comes under joint inflammation, acute tenosynovitis, and one more thing is there in nerve injury to prevent contracture and all this fixed deformities. In nerve injury, we use splint. Contraindication of splint, compartment syndrome. Is there if there is any increase in compartment syndrome and all this will if you apply splint and there is no space for the limb to expand, so the intercompartmental pressure will increase and it may lead to the means gangrene and all this. Need for open reduction. If there is any need for open reduction, so we better avoid splint. Infected skin condition or when there is a high risk of infection. When there is a high risk of infection and the skin is not good, so you cannot apply splint. Material of splint. Splint material can be plaster of Paris. Nowadays we all know plaster of Paris, and this is the most commonly used material. Cream or wire splint are there. Previously we used to use this, and steel we are using in PSCs and all this. These are readily available and easy to use. Fiberglass, instead of plaster of Paris, fiberglass we are using. This is more strong and lightweight. Prefabricated splint are there. AR splint, Becomb splint. I will discuss about all this in the coming slides. PUP, as you know, this is calcium sulfate anhydrous or dehydrate. When you wet it and give it for settings for 3 to 9 minutes, it crystallizes through an exothermic reaction, and for crystallization it takes about 24 to 72 hours. Crystallization makes it hard, and we are using it on daily basis here. Advantages of PUP is easier to mold. You can give any shape. Can be used in any limb. upper limb, lower limb, even in spine. Less expensive. These disadvantages are more difficult to apply and needs training and all this. Gets soaky and soft when it gets wet. If you keep it wet for more than 2-3 hours, then it will be very soft and it will break easily. So these are the disadvantages. This is fiber cast splint. Okay, now we are using it in this is little costly, so we are using only in patients which are able to afford all this. And this advantage of this fiber cast splint is that this is very lightweight. This is at least 8 to 10 times lighter than the PUP cast and stronger than the PUP. These are carbon fiber cast and this is little costly. The only thing is that, and air splint in inflatable splint. Okay, this is also called a pneumatic splint. Becomes rigid when filled with air. Okay, the function is same as to limit motion and control bleeding and swelling, all this. With this type of splint, one more advantage is that this reduces bleeding. You can control the bleeding with this type of splint. Vacuum splint, this is just opposite to the pneumatic splint. Here you suck out the this is ready-made splint with multiple polystyrene balls inside. You suck out the air in that, and this collapses and compresses the injured limb and act as a splint. These are opposite. This is vacuum, that one was pneumatic. You in that you put air, here you take out the air. Kramer wire splint, I was talking about that. These are metallic splint. You can see in the pictures there are two rods and multiple connecting rod in between, and these are malleable. You can fold it in any direction, bend it in any direction. So used for temporary quick splintage of the limb for transport. These are mainly used in battleground and remote places where there are no access to the PUP and all this. Two thick parallel wires with ladder like thin wires. Malleable, can be easily bent to contour the limb. You can bend it in any shape according to the limb. You can see the picture here that the lower one, the heel is hanging. They have molded the splint just like a U, and after that posteriorly there is extension of that. This U is to keep the heel off from the splint. If you keep the heel directly over the splint, there will be pain after 2-3 hours in the heel, and it will be very discomforting for the patient. This is you cannot apply the metallic splint directly. You have to cover it with cotton and gauze bandage before. After that you put mold it and tie it with the limb. Splint in upper limb. This was about the material in the what material we are using for splint. Now we will go for the specific splint we are using, and these are not a complete list. I am giving you the brief idea about the daily uses only, which we are using daily here. Okay, this is below elbow splint. As this can be made from PUP, fiber cast, Kramer wire, whatever. The below elbow, because this is not included the elbow, and you can move the elbow and all this. Only the wrist is immobilized. This type of splint is used mostly in the injury around the wrist or distal radius, distal ulna, and base of metacarpal and all this, or any inflammatory condition of the wrist like tuberculosis, or even in decurrent tenosynovitis, for giving rise to the splint, wrist. We are using this below elbow splint. This is lateral elbow splint, also called above elbow splint. This includes the elbow. It goes up to the surgical neck of the humerus, and it is lateral elbow because it is applied in one side only, lateral side, and others are cotton and gauze bandage on. These are used in injury around the elbow and upper forearm and distal humerus, like fracture of supracondylar fracture, elbow dislocation, Monteggia fracture, fracture dislocation, radial head fractures, and all these. Then inflammatory condition of the elbow, colliculum fracture, these things, dislocation of elbow, all this mostly around the elbow. Only thing is that it extends beyond the elbow, immobilizes the elbow, but the wrist, it immobilizes the wrist also. Okay, because in orthopedics you have to, the rule is that you have to immobilize two joint, one above, one below. So we incorporate the wrist here, because if you don't immobilize the wrist and there is wrist movement, there will be also movement of the radius and the movement around the elbow also. This is thumb spica splint, another splint for used in upper limb. This is used in fracture around the base of the thumb, like Rolando's fracture, button, goalkeeper's thumb, and even immobilizing the wrist also. Thumb spica splint. This is the ready-made one. You can apply it with PUP also, or you can go for the ready-made one available commercially. The advantage with this one is that you can take it off while bathing and all this, but this the PUP one is better because it immobilizes completely. And this is used in metacarpal fracture of the thumb, in base of the thumb, scaphoid fracture, goalkeeper's thumb, and all this. Bellevue sling, also called arm sling pouch. You all might have seen all this. Arm sling pouch, it is readily used. The left side is arm sling pouch, and you can use it along with chest strapping. That arm sling pouch is used to give rest to the upper limb, and the chest stripping is done in the AC joint dislocation and shoulder dislocation and injury around the shoulder, to give rest to the shoulder. U-slab. This is another splint used for shaft humerus fracture, mostly in the mid diaphyseal area. This is called U-slab because it is like shape of U, and here the extension of the upper extension is up to the acromion, but you can go up to the neck. So if you go up to the neck, base of the neck, and then it will be like U. So it is called U-slab. This is used in shaft humerus fracture. Wrist immobilizer. This is the commercial alternative for that below elbow slab. Okay, to immobilize wrist. This is the same use as the below elbow slab. Shoulder immobilizer. This is mostly used in shoulder dislocation. It has a strap around the chest for the forearm and the arm, and one more strap for the shoulder. And previously for shoulder dislocation we used to go for arm chest strapping with crab bandage or simple gauze bandage, but now we are having this commercially available shoulder immobilizer. And this is used in shoulder dislocation or fracture around the proximal humerus. Fracture around the shaft of the humerus we use U-slab, but in the proximal humerus we use shoulder immobilizer. Figure of 8 bandage. This is for clavicle fracture. Okay, any fracture in the shaft of the clavicle or lateral end of the clavicle, we go for the figure of eight bandage. You can make it with gauze bandage and cotton, or there are readily available commercial figure of eight bandage or clavicular brace. This is also called clavicular brace. This is used in clavicle fracture. Splint for lower limb. The most important splint among all these, upper limb, lower limb, or whatever splints of for spine, this Thomas splint is the most important for your exam purpose. This will be invariably there for orthopedics viva, and this is the bread and butter of the examiner. And you all of you must know the splint very thoroughly, its uses, and what are the measurement for the splint. This is a splint for the lower limb. This can be used for traction purpose also. I will discuss it later on. Ring at an angle of 120. The ring is at an angle of 120 with the outer bar. Okay, there is a the inner bar, the short one. You can see this is straight, but outer bar is there is one curve, and that curve is to accommodate the greater trochanter. Two sidebars are there. Outer bar bend to accommodate the greater trochanter. Leg support on sling tied to the sidebar. This is the empty splint. We have to prepare it before applying by tying gauze bandage and cotton around it, and after that you can use this. And this is how we use this. You can, this picture is not that clear, but you can see blue bandages are applied in the splint, and after that we keep at over the bandages. And this is used like this. The long bar is kept outside, and this is mostly used. This is called an universal splint. Actually, there is a story about this. This is developed by Thomas, who is father of orthopedics, known as father of orthopedics, and he make it for his wife. Actually, his wife was suffering from TB hip, and it was very painful, and he was unable to sleep at night due to crying. So he made this splint to give relief to her. So first it was make for TB splint. It was using TB knee. It was used for TB knee, but now we are using in any condition where lower limb condition where splinters is needed. This has become universal. If you can use it in tibia fracture, knee dislocation, knee tuberculosis, femur fracture, either neck femur, trochanter, shaft femur, distal femur, any fracture in the lower limb, you can use it. So it is called universal splint. This is one more splint. We are using it daily here. This is called Bowler and Brown splint. Bowler and Brown are two different scientists, means no orthopedician. Bowler made this first, and Brown modified it. And there is one platform where the leg is kept, and there are three pulleys through which you can give traction also. This is a splint which acts as a splint and a device for giving traction. Traction units are self-constrained, easily can be used easily. Limb in comfortable position. Angle of traction can be changed. There are three different pulleys for traction, and so you can change the angle of the traction in whatever direction you want. Multi-purpose application. This is as I already told, can be used for traction also. This is there is three pulley A, B, C. B is used for giving traction along the tibia, and this A is used for giving traction along the tibia. B is used for traction in the femur. here we have you can see they have put weight in the they have put pin in the upper tibia and giving traction for the femur. And C is to prevent foot drop. This is so if you keep the foot for limb for in traction for long time, the foot will go in plantar flexion and there will be contracture of the muscle in that position, and this patient will unable to walk once there is healing of the bone. So you have to put keep the foot in neutral flexion. So for that pulley C is used. It may be there in exam also. And you have to know uses of the all these three pulleys, and how you can in what are the condition you can use all this splint. This can be used in soft humerus fracture, soft femur fracture, as you are seeing here. They have applied for that upper tibial pin traction through pulley B. You can use it in for tibia, soft tibia fracture, either in the proximal tibia or in the mid shaft or in the distal tibia through the pulley A. So this is also almost universal. You can use in both the bone means leg and thigh fracture in the lower limb. This is posterior leg splint. There are two types of posterior leg splint. One is above knee and the one is below knee. Above knee is used when you have a fracture around the distal femur or shaft femur or in the proximal tibia, and dislocation of the knee and all this. The below knee you can use any fracture around the ankle or the calcaneum or the talus, or any sprain around the ankle, any inflammatory condition of the ankle, even in foot drop you can use this one. This splint are here in this is made of PUP. You can made it from wood also, or from cream or wire also. It may go up to the greater trochanter according to the level of the injury. So you can use it below knee or above knee. Splint for nerve injuries. There are specific splint for nerve injuries. These are cock-up splint. This is for radial nerve injury. In radial nerve injury, you all know there is a wrist drop. So wrist goes in palmar flexion, and if you don't give the splint, then there will be palmar contracture of the palmar muscles, and means volar muscle, and the wrist will be fixed in palmar flexion. So you have to give a cock-up splint to keep the wrist in neutral flexion. And there are two types. One is static. The left side one is static, and the right side is dynamic. This is static. You cannot move the wrist with this one, but in dynamic you can do range of motion exercise. There are you can see there are some spring attached in the dorsal area. If you see in wrist drop, the palmar muscles are working, so you can palmar flex the wrist. Once you palmar flex the wrist, the spring will automatically extend the wrist due to spring action. So it will again go in dorsiflexion, and again you do work your muscles and palmar flex it. So this way you can flex and extend the wrist. So wrist is it keeps the wrist mobile, and the muscle keep the muscle around the wrist active. This is knuckle bender splint. This is used in radial nerve or median nerve or ulnar nerve injury. This is just opposite that cock-up splint. It keeps your wrist and the metacarpal and the finger in flexions. In the median nerve and all this, there is ulnar nerve injury, there is claw, and there is extension at the metacarpal phalangeal joint. And you can see it has flexed in the metacarpophalangeal joint, and this is just opposite to the cock-up splint. Just remember the name, knuckle bender splint. Knuckle bender splint, you can make it out from the name only. It will bend your knuckle. This is aeroplane splint. This is used in brachial plexus injury. This is aeroplane splint because this is just like a wing of the aeroplane, and this has two part. One is attached to the trunk, and one other is attached to the limb, upper limb, and this is used in brachial plexus injury. But we are not using it now very regularly. We are using it very rarely, and nowadays for brachial plexus injury, the dictum is that you repair as early as possible. Previously, we used to use this aeroplane splint. This is foot drop splint. This is used in common peroneal nerve injury or injury to the sciatic nerve, common peroneal part of the sciatic nerve. During this injury can be in trauma or during any surgery or due to tumor. So there is in wrist foot drop there is plantar flexion of the foot. So this will keep the foot in neutral flexion. So this is foot drop splint. This is splint for there are splint for spine also. Now in cervical spine there are soft cervical spine collar and hard cervical collar. These are used in multiple conditions like cervical spondylitis, any tuberculosis of the cervical spine, or any other septic condition of the cervical spine, even injury to the cervical spine, and cervical radiculopathy. This is sternal occipital mandibular immobilizer. This is improved version of the cervical collar. It immobilizes the cervical spine more rigidly, and this is used of any cervical spine injury, cervical tuberculosis, or after cervical spine surgery. This is the same. This is same function as the collar, but this is better one. This is lumbar corset. This is used in lower spine, lumbosacral spine, for lower back pain, back muscle strain, any tuberculosis of the lumbar spine, and lumbar radiculopathies, listhesis, where there is a slide of a vertebra over another vertebra, so there is instability. We use this one to give external support to stabilize the spine. This is all about the spleen. Now we will go about the go for the tractions. In traction, there are mainly two type of traction. One is skin traction, one is skeletal traction, and I will discuss the skin traction first. After that, we will go for skeletal traction. What is traction? Orthopedist great master tool. Traction. See, previously we used to treat most of the patient, 99% of the patient, with plaster and traction and all this only. Now, with the advance of orthopedics, we are using doing surgeries very often, but still we are without traction orthopedics. There is no existence of orthopedics. So this is called a master tool of orthopedics. Traction, the application of a force to stretch certain part of the body in a specific direction. Okay, the direction should be specific and a particular part. There are several type of traction for depending upon the area of the body, part of the body. So this is application or tools for applying a force to stretch the particular part of the body in a particular direction. Why do we need traction? So traction in any inflammation of the joint, pain or muscle spasm, or any deformity of the limb, you can apply traction. Any fracture of the bone, abnormal mobility due to fracture, or pain due to fracture, we apply traction. The purpose of traction, what is the function of traction? It regains the normal length and alignment of the involved bone. In traction, we give traction to maintain the normal length. What happens while there is fracture? If you don't give traction, then due to the muscle pull, the two bone fragment will override one each other. So while doing surgery, there will be limb shortening, and while doing surgery you have to struggle a lot if you don't apply and keep it in alignment. So one function is to maintain the normal length of the limb and alignment by traction. To reduce and immobilize a fracture bone. It immobilizes the fracture bone, reduces the fracture fragment by aligning it. To relieve or eliminate muscle spasm, and to relieve pressure on the nerve, especially spinal cord. If we apply in the cervical spine also, in the lumbar spine also, later on you will see. I will show you the pictures also. To prevent reduce skeletal deformities, muscle contracture. Okay, like in foot drop, you have to give traction with bular bound C pulley to prevent foot drop, and to prevent deformities also we use tractions. It controls pain, reduces fracture, maintain reduction, prevent and correct deformity. There are two types of fracture based on principle. One is fixed traction, one is sliding traction. Fixed traction is applied to the leg against a fixed point to counter pressure. Fixed traction is Thomas plane. You can give traction with Thomas plane. This is a type of fixed traction. This is sliding traction. In sliding traction, body we keep the bed in the foot and elevated, and the head and downwards, so that there is counter traction along the axis of the body due to gravity. You can see two arrow, one is going upward. That means due to the gravity the body is going this to the left, and means below, and due to the weight we attached to the traction, it is pulling the limb. So there is traction and counter traction. So this is sliding traction, and it increases the efficiency of the traction. Types of traction on application. This one is skin traction. There are two types of skin traction. One is adhesive, one is non-adhesive. And skeletal traction. Skin traction is this is non-invasive. You have to apply over the skin, and in skeletal traction you have to put either pin or wire in the skeleton. In any bone you can apply skeletal traction. Upper limb, lower limb. I will come in this later on. Skin traction. Traction force is applied over a large area of skin, applied over a limb distal to the fracture site. It is applied over a large area of skin distal to the fracture site. Adhesive skin traction. Adhesive skin traction is there is adhesive adhesive means what to say, adhesive strap in both sides of the limb, and this is attached over the skin, and it is hanged with a thread. And non-adhesive skin traction makes it is applied with a wrap bandage. So there is no adhesive used in this. In non-adhesive skin traction you cannot exceed 4.5 kg. You can maximum hang 4.5 kg from that traction. In adhesive you can use up to 7 kg. A non-adhesive used in atrophic skin and in old age and skin sensitive to adhesive strapping. Sometimes people have allergies on all this. In this type you cannot use that adhesive one. You have to go for the non-adhesive type of skin traction, or you can go for skeletal extraction. Common skin traction are box traction. This is the most commonly used skin traction, and there are other types: Dunlop traction, pelvic traction, modified Brand traction, Gallows Brand traction. I will show you the pictures later on. Mostly we use the box traction. These are the common type of skin traction. Box traction is often used properly for preoperatively for femoral fracture. Can use tape no more than 5 kg, not used to obtain or hold reduction. This is not used to obtain or hold reduction. no more than 5 kg. You cannot use hang more than 5 kgs. This is box traction. And there are strap around the leg. You apply the strap, and there is friction between the skin and that strap. So and there are you can see strap going towards the foot, and you can hang weight there. And this is used in femoral fractures. Brandt-Gallows traction. This is used mainly in sharp femur fracture in child. In the position, this is a very awkward position, as you can see. This is nowadays we are not using it. We used to use it means previously we used to use it, but now we are not using it. This is used in child less than 2 years of age, and above 2 years of age you can go for plaster. Hip spica is there, and you can go for surgery, but less than 2 years of age we used to use this thing, and this gallows traction. And weight of the child should be less than 15 to 18 kg. Above knee skin traction is applied bilaterally. So you can see the strap of the traction is going above the knee up to the mid thigh. Tie the traction to the overhead beam. There is overhead beam which is tied there, and due to the weight of the body, the femur is kept aligned. Dunlop traction. This is one more type of skin traction. This is used in upper limb, mainly supracondylar or transcondylar humerus fracture. This is Dunlop fracture. Okay. Apply skin traction to the forearm. Abductor shoulder 45 degree to the elbow is flexed 45 degree. See, you can see that elbow is here, it is flexed up to 90 degree. You can go up to 90 degree, or if you can keep it up to 45 degree. The strap are applied in the forearm, and one shoulder is kept in 90 degree or 45 degree to 45 to 90 degree, and elbow is also kept in 45 to 90 degree, and humerus there is one pin, and skeletal traction is given along the axis of the humerus, and the skin strap is used to keep the elbow in 45 to 90 degree. This is Dunlop traction. Pelvic traction used for conservative management of PIBD. PIBD is posterior intervertebral vertebral disc prolapse intervertebral disc, used for conservative management of PIBD. The amount by which foot and should be elevated depends upon patient's weight. More heavy the patient, more should be elevation. This is pelvic traction. Okay. This is attached to the pelvic bone, not the bone. This is the kind of skin traction attached over the pelvis, and weight is applied there to give traction to the lumbar spine. So there is a increase in the intervertebral disc space, so there is pain relief and less compression in the nerve roots. Skeletal traction. Skeletal traction is given with pin or wire inserted into the skeleton and in any bone, more frequently used in lower limb. Skeletal traction is more frequently used in lower limb, should be reserved for those cases which skin traction is not insufficient. Either skin traction is ineffective because in traction you cannot use more than 6 to 7 kgs. So in lower limb you have to give more heavy traction because their muscles are bulky and very strong. So you have to counter that muscle force, you have to means hang a heavy weight. So skin traction, most of the time skin traction is not that effective, so we have to go for skeletal traction, or we have to go for skeletal traction in patients those who have allergies to the adhesive skin traction, or skin condition is not good, or has open wound in the limb. In this condition we have to apply skeletal traction. The sites of skeletal traction is upper tibia, lower femoral, lower tibial, calcaneal, olecranon and metacarpal. See, even in the metacarpal bone also you can put a K-wire and give tractions. So upper tibial, lower femoral, in almost all the bone you can give traction with skeletal traction. I'll show the all the different type of skeletal traction. This is proximal tibial traction. Okay, there is one round point in the proximal tibia where we insert a pin used for distal 2/3 of femoral shaft fracture. This is used for femoral shaft fracture, but pin is inserted in the proximal tibia. The area is marked. There is a rule that from tibial tuberosity you go 2.5 centimeter posteriorly and distally. Okay, then you mark that point, you insert the pin there, and from that pin you give traction. Easy to avoid joint and growth plate, and 2 centimeter distal and posterior to the tibia, tibial tubercle. Okay, this is used in femur fracture, distal femur fracture. This is the way we give skeletal traction with proximal tibial pin, upper tibial pin for shaft femur or distal femur fracture. This is the area where you put the pin, and this is the type of construct you have for putting weight. Distal tibial traction, the same thing is here. The pin is inserted in the distal tibia, and the construct is almost same about the like that upper tibial pin. Only thing is the pin is put in the distal tibia. Here this is used for shaft tibia or distal proximal tibial fracture. Calcaneal traction, this if you have fracture here on the distal tibia, so you cannot put pin in the distal tibia, so we have to go further below to the calcaneum. So this is the mark where you insert the pin. It is 2 centimeter below and posterior to the lateral malleoli. You palpate the lateral malleoli, you go 2 centimeter below and 2 centimeter posterior, and insert the pin there and give traction. The construct is same in all the skeletal traction. Only thing is that we put the pin in different part. This can be used in distal tibial fracture or in the ankle dislocation, or around the even in talus fracture or shaft tibial fracture. This is lateral upper femoral traction. This is used in hip dislocation or fracture around the head of the femur or neck of the femur. The one screw is inserted in the along the direction of the neck in the proximal femur, and traction is given from that screw. Cervical traction. There are two type of cervical traction. This is one is skin traction and skeletal traction. Skin traction is this is called head holder traction. This is head holder traction. Okay, this is non-invasive. You apply this is head holder traction. You apply a padded strap around below the chin and below the occiput, and attach all this with thread, and hang that weight from that thread, and this will apply the traction to the neck. Okay, one more type of cervical traction is there. This is invasive. This is skeletal cervical traction. This is called Crutchfield tongue. The tongue is inserted in the temporal bone. This is not means the tip of the tongue is not inserted up to the outer table of the skull. You can see that picture. The tongue is inserted up to the outer table. It has not pierced the inner table. So this is invasive. You have to cut the skin and drill hole in the skull, and this is that traction using the Crutchfield tongue. Here you can see that it has gone through the temporal bone and skin, and attached to the pulley, and weight is there. Weight cannot see due to the bed. You can hang up to 15 kg of weight with this stone. This is cervical traction. Okay, one is skin traction, cervical skin traction, head halter, skeletal traction, crutchfield tongue or Barton tongue is there. One more type of this. Both are same. The shape is different. This is crutchfield tongue. This is clinical photograph of using crutchfield tongue for giving cervical traction. This is used in cervical spine injury, any cervical vertebral fracture or tuberculosis of the cervical spine, or cervical radiculopathy due to nerve root compression. Complication of skeletal traction: infection, cut out. Sometimes there may be fracture of the bone due to cut out of that pin. If you put the pin in wrong direction and wrong part, then there may be fracture of that bone. These are destruction at the fracture site. If you put more weight than needed, then there will be destruction around in the fracture site. Facial damage: if you put the pin through the faces in children, then there will be facial damage and growth abnormalities in that bone. And nerve injury and as well as muscular injury while inserting the pin. So there are specific places and specific precaution you have to take for to avoid facial damage and nerve injury and vascular injury. You have to know which nerve and vessels is where, so to avoid that injury while putting the pin. So this is all about splint and traction in the orthopedics. You just overview about the thing we are using often here. There are lots other things which are not used now, either not used nowadays or used very rarely. So this is not possible to discuss about all these things in 1 hour. So that's all. Thank you.